work closely together. And so with that, I would like to introduce Mark Rennick, and he will be introducing another gentleman.
Proud to express my name is Mark Rennick. I'm a blessed gentleman. I am a returning citizen, which I know several of the people in the audience can do. I won't make you raise your hands and tell me. But I did 7 years in prison out here south in the desert. I've been out for about almost 7.5 now. And I was fortunate enough the first year that I got out to be asked by a church to attend this new thing that they're starting, a conference called a reentry conference that was founded by Mr. Mike Gallagher and Mr. Dick Gallegos. I've been doing that for almost 6 years now, twice a month. It is absolutely the best thing I do. We're a family, and we greet people within the first 90 days of their release, and we come out and help them move on, and bicycles and support, et cetera, et cetera. It absolutely keeps me sane and sober. I appreciate that and all the people who are there. It's a family. I'm blessed also, too, that it got some attention on a national basis almost 3 years ago. And the gentleman from Ohio came out and spent some time with us. We drove around, I told him what we did, we drove around, and he said, hey, if you had some extra money, what would you do with it? And I said, hey, we teach Idaho about what it's like to be on parole. And so that was, and has been, developed into Systemic Change of Idaho. We'll be talking about that tomorrow in the reentry conference if you'd like to talk to. But one of the conditions he had for me was, you have to go 2 places, and one of them was to go to Chicago and be in a part of a one-day seminar for emerging leaders with an organization by Just Leadership USA. And that is where I met our next speaker almost 3 years ago in Chicago. He was outgoing and dominant there. He still is. They let me join their fellowship this last year, and I just graduated. I got the plaque. So I am now part of our 100 fellows who are alumni. It is a unique fraternity, and I'm very happy with it. I think the first day that I was in Chicago, I sat with 45 men and women who had been incarcerated, and it was a real powerful feeling. And Ronald Simpson is going to explain that organization and exactly what they do. My friend, Ron.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is truly an honor, a pleasure, and a blessing to be here among you today. That the Lord in His infinite wisdom brought us all our pathways to this day, to this moment, to share this space. And I am truly humbled to be here. But before I bore you with my story, everyone stand up, stretch your legs, and, shake it out. Yeah. Because, after you listen for a while, your ears slip down in your back pocket, so you need to kind of stand. It doesn't that feel bad? I'm kind of humored because they gave me wine, coffee, and a microphone. The last time that happened, I talked to a dog off a meat truck. So I'm going to have a conversation with you. Instead, I don't want to talk to you for a whole lot. I'm going to talk a little bit, talk about my story. But at some point along the way, if I say something that that piques your interest, you have a curiosity, feel free to ask. No questions off limits. My life is an open book. I use it to share and to have teachable moments. And the backdrop of my story is that I spent 27 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and my conviction was overturned after 27 years, and I was subsequently released 6 years ago. So you can imagine I'm a little nervous sitting at the table with the director of the Department of Corrections, the chairman of the parole board. I'm looking around making sure I don't get arrested. In my travels, yesterday I traveled, it was kind of difficult getting here yesterday. I traveled all over the place, and I was in New York, and I live in Detroit, Michigan, but I work in New York. so I flew home to Detroit overnight, and I got up the next morning rushing to the airport, and as luck would have it, there was some crazy accident, the roads were closed. I missed my flight. But I was determined to get here, and I'm glad I did. And last night I was sitting in my room thinking about, what am I going to talk to these people about? What can I say besides my story to, have a conversation? And so I thought about it. I'm like, I'm going to talk about white privilege. I'm like, that may be good. So I went on my computer, and I typed in white privilege. And I found all these amazing studies and reports from Stanford University and Harvard and all these think tanks. I said, man, this is amazing. But then halfway through, I thought about it. Like, talking to white people about white privilege is like talking to fish about water. And I looked at the demographics, and I decided, well, there's only 3% population in Idaho that's black. So I'm going to talk about black privilege. I typed black privilege on my computer, looking for these reports. And the screen was blank. Maybe I need a charger. I plugged the charger. I typed it in again. It's time to start flashing and beeping and buzzing and smoking, and said, there's no such thing. Then it cut off. I had to go buy a new computer today. But not you suffer through my terrible joke. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I love the quote. You mentioned quotes. I live by a quote. Every day I get up in the morning and say, I am a vital force among forces, and I refuse to be the victim of a prearranged destiny. Life, my story is a life of struggle. It's a story of redemption. It's a story of second chances. It's a story of everything that we as humans strive to be and strive to do, and those of us in the spiritual and religious community seek to do intentionally. I come from humble beginning. I was born in Flint, Michigan, 1957, to a beautiful mother and a loving father. My dad was a school teacher. My mom was a homemaker. I was raised in what I thought was a healthy home. I was a great athlete in high school. I was a track star. I went to Eastern Michigan on a track scholarship, and I was good in grades. But my life had difficulties. It's funny, when you live in difficult situations, you don't really realize it. It's like a rose doesn't realize its own sin. I lived in an abusive home. My dad even though he was a teacher and a paragon of the community to some degree, he was abusive. So I suffered abuse at the hands of my dad. Our whole family did. And as fate would have it, in 1980, I was almost 23 years old, 22 years old. I was married, had my first daughter, and my wife was pregnant with my son. So I was working at General Motors at the time. I was a journeyman tool and die maker, and I had worked there for a few years. So anyway, I get a call. I get called to the office, say, you need to call home right away. I called, because my wife was pregnant. I'm thinking something. I call home, what's going on? I'm thinking she might be having a problem with the pregnancy. I'm panicking. She said, no, I'm okay, but you need to come home. I'm like, are you okay? Why do I need to come home? She said, no, just come home. So I go home, and I run in the house. What's the matter? You need to go to your parents' house right now. Why do I need to go to my parents' house? I need to go back to work. So, okay, I go to my parents' house. I get on the street that my parents live in, and there's police cars, there's yellow tape, there's a crowd. I couldn't even get through the crowd. I had to park my car and literally walk down to the house. And when I got to the house, my mother was sitting in the back of the police car in a catatonic state. And by the time they let me through the crowd and the police directed me to the sergeant who was in charge, I said, what's going on? Why is my mother sitting in the back of this car? She said, we believe your mother shot and killed your father. He's in the house. And my two youngest brothers and sisters were in the house at the time. They were like 10 and 12 years old. So me being the oldest son, I was charged with, dealing with the situation. My mom had murdered my dad. After 25 years of marriage in the marital home. Trauma doesn't even begin to describe what I went through and what I felt. That was July 25th, 1980. It was one of those dates that live in infamy in your mind. So I was tasked with task of burying my dad and keeping my mom out of prison. As the oldest child, I was married, I was working at General Motors, I was going to college because I was in the apprenticeship program for skilled trades. It was crazy. I never had time to grieve. So from July 25th of 1980, my life took a spiral. I started turning down, I started abusing drugs, I started abusing everything in my life. Because I had internalized this pain, and I had no way, my only way of relieving it was through the trials and tribulations that I forced upon myself at that time. And so I became involved in the drug trade in Flint, Michigan, and even I was like Clark Kent, and like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. During the day, I was working a job at AC at General Motors, I was making all this money, I had a beautiful family, cars at home, but at night, I was a monster. I was running the streets, selling drugs, pulling guns on people, all kind of crazy stuff. So, as luck would have it, 4 or 5 years later, get into a shootout with some guys I thought were, some rival gang members. It turned out it was an undercover police officer. And I wasn't at the scene when he got shot, but I was there when he got started. He got shot in the arm after a 2-mile chase. I wasn't at the scene. So anyway, I go to trial, get convicted of assault with intent to commit murder on this police officer. Me and 3 co-defendants. 2 of my co-defendants testified against me, 1 went to trial with me. On July 25th, 1986, the same day of my father's death, I walked into prison on the exact same day, the anniversary of his death, to begin what I call my institutional death. Because that's what prison is. Make no mistake about it. Prison is institutional death. In the first 5 years of my sentence, I had a 50-year sentence. The first 5 years, I was angry. Super angry. I was part of the problem. I was not part of the solution at that point. But as time went forward, fast forward, 1990, a friend of mine brought me a book. There's a book called Visions for Black Men, and it talked about social duties, our duties as men to our communities, to our families, and to ourselves. And it was like a light bulb went off. I said, man, I gotta do something different. I'm gonna kill somebody here, I'm gonna die here. So that was a turning point for me. I turned my life around, I started turning my life around. I became involved in advocating for people that couldn't advocate for themselves. I've always hated bullies. And inside of prison, there's a lot of bullies, there's a lot of people that get bullied. So I became an advocate for the poor, an advocate for those who couldn't defend themselves, because I was always I'm not a little guy, I was kind of healthy, I've been able to defend myself, so I defended others. I became a well-known jailhouse lawyer, a paralegal while I was in there. I got people out of prison. Me and my buddies filed the largest class action lawsuit in Michigan against the Department of Corrections on conditions of confinement, and on and on and on. So, fast forward a few more years. I had been in prison 15 or 16 years. Father's Day 2001, my children were coming to visit. Anybody who's been in prison know that your visit from your children is like manna from heaven. I tell you thinking about it now, and I've been in prison for a number of years. I had a son and 3 daughters. My son was 21 years old. And one I called him and said, hey, you guys coming to visit? Hey, Dad, I'm going to bring the girls up and come to see you. Great. So I'm sitting there waiting. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Nobody shows up. Count clears at 3 o'clock. Where's everybody? So I jump on the phone. I'm trying to call my children. No answer. Call my ex-wife. I've been married twice. Neither one of my wives answered, which was strange. My mother didn't even answer, which was super strange. So I called my ex-mother-in-law. Hey, Mom, have you seen the kid that's supposed to come visit? She said, you haven't heard? No. It's Father's Day. What's going on? She said, little Ronnie been shot and killed. My only son was shot and killed by a 14-year-old juvenile in the streets of Flint, Michigan. To this day, I still can't always process that pain. But what I did, I used that pain as fuel for advocacy, because I could have used it, I could have let it destroy me, made me angry again, and just revert back to my old ways. I didn't care, and start harming people. But I used it for the good, the better good of man. I used it to advocate for this 14-year-old child to be treated as a child. Because in Michigan, they give juveniles life without parole for murder. And I did not see no use, they served no useful purpose to give a child life without parole. It served no useful purpose. It was not going to bring my son back. It was not going to do anything but tear his family apart and further erode the fabric of our community, which is already in dire straits. And it was tough, because the courts or the prosecutor didn't recognize me as a traditional victim. I'm poor, I'm in prison, and they didn't want to hear me. So I had to advocate over and above them to get them to give that child a second chance. I was successful. The child served 7 years in the juvenile system. By the time he turned 21, he had done well enough and let him go. I mean, and today, he's not running for president or anything, but he's not in trouble anymore either. He got a second chance at life, and I'm glad for it. And he's living his life. He's doing, reasonably well and not getting in trouble, working and being a productive member of society, all because he had a second chance. So it brings me up to kind of my situation. 2009, my conviction was overturned. I had been arguing for years and years worked on my own case. And the federal courts agreed with me in 2009, said, it had merit, prosecuted misconduct, we're going to overturn your conviction. But that wasn't the end of it. I said, I'm out of here. 2009, I'm going home. The state appealed it, and no one would grant me bond. I sat in prison for 3 more years without a conviction. My conviction had been overturned, but they wouldn't let me out of prison. 2012, the federal appellate court finally said, enough is enough. Let him go or give him a new trial. So here I stand before you today, a blessed and thankful man. And the work I do today, Mark talked about it a little bit. I work for an organization called Just Leadership USA. It's a national advocacy organization out of New York City that advocates for, our mission is to cut the national prison population in half by 2030. And we do that through 3 ways. We have a leadership track, leadership development training for formerly incarcerated and directly impacted people. I was in the very first cohort in 2015. The organization was founded late November 2014. I graduated. They offered me a job. Thank you, Jesus. So I was the alumni associate. And earlier this year, they promoted me to director of outreach and alumni engagement. So I'm a national director now. I'm over the leadership department. Mark is one of my graduates from this year's cohort, and we are honored to have him for sure. Matter of fact, we're working. Say that again? Yes, first one from Idaho. And we are actively looking for more Idahoans to come and join us. And it's an experience that if you've been incarcerated or directly impacted, it's an experience you will never forget. Never forget. And because we take people that we feel are already leaders and we amplify their leadership. Because we feel that, leaders are already, they're already born, they just have to be uncaged. And a lot of times people that have gone through the prison system don't always have, the courage to stand up and be leaders. They may have a lot of boastful actions and stuff, but inside they're nervous and timid. They don't want to talk publicly. They don't want to step out and do anything. But we at our organization, we help amplify their voices because we believe that those closer to the problem are closer to the solution, but furthest away from resources and opportunity. So Just Leadership seeks to bring the impacted people closer to those resources and opportunities so they can elevate themselves and their communities at the same time. Our second part of our process for doing this is our advocacy work. We have a lot of advocacy campaigns going on around the country. Our flagship campaign, the one we started 2 years ago, was called Close Rikers. Rikers Island is one of the most notorious jails in the country. It sits out in the river off the airport in New York, and it's a horrendous place. So 2 years ago, we launched a campaign to Close Rikers. And it's funny because when we started it, they looked at us, everybody thought we were crazy. Because the only people advocating for the closure of Rikers were the people inside of it. community thought we had been smoking or something. They say, have they legalized marijuana already? Like, you guys are crazy. So we launched Closed Records, and today Closed Records is the stated policy goal of the city of New York. It is truly powerful. And it's one thing I love about Mark and his organization, Systemic Change of Idaho, because in Just Leadership, we believe in either go big or go home. We believe in being audacious. We don't believe in incrementalism. We believe in taking the bull by the horns and running to the ground, or getting run in the ground by trying to do it. At least try to do it. And we know that if Mark and his reentry program, Systemic Change of Idaho, is successful, that means we have systemic change in America. And we need systemic change in America. Badly. You guys see your mission as a church, as an organization, was founded on the principle of helping the poor and the downtrodden and the weak. Those are goals that are and values that are so near and dear to my heart. I love what I call social duties. He had a slide, the president had a slide up here earlier talking about social mission, social problems. Our social duty is to address those social problems. I always talk about putting the humanity back into being human. We've gotten away from that. We've become such a coarse and callous nation. We don't extend our hand to our brothers. People that don't look like us or think like us or believe like us, we ostracize them. Why? Because they're different. But at the core of it, we're all the same. We have the same desires. We have the same wants. We have the same values. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants liberty. Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to live comfortably in their homes, be secure in their property, and secure in their persons. But we've gotten away from that. And I would hope, and I'm encouraged by, listen, I watch this strategic plan. I like strategic plans. Our organization is going through a reorganization at this time, so we got some strategic plans going too. Because my boss called me to New York 2 weeks ago on 2 days' notice. I said, I'm either getting fired or promoted. So now I want to discuss a strategic plan with you. So, okay, great. I must be getting promoted. So, that being said, are there any questions before I continue around? Anybody got any thoughts that's bubbling up? I was never in Rikers. I was in Michigan. I did 27 years in Michigan. I just happen to be working in New York now. No, thank God I was never in Rikers. You know, hey, there is a God. Yeah, our founder is a gentleman named Glenn Martin. And Glenn Martin served 6 years on Rikers for a robbery conviction. And Glenn is, I wish you guys had a chance to meet him. Glenn is a genius. He's like, words cannot adequately describe Glenn, his passion, his vision. You know, you often see people with visions or glimpses of vision. Glenn has such a wide-ranging vision. I always compare him. I love to play chess. I was a very good chess player in prison. But Glenn played 3D chess. You know, it ain't no even a comparison. And I love Glenn. I wish he was here to embrace you today, because he would talk to you about. Go ahead.
We would like to know what happened to your mother.
My mom, she's alive and kicking. Mama's good. We just talked about it at the table. My mother, she ended up serving. She didn't serve any time. She got 5 years probation. She had lifetime probation at first. And 3 or 4 years in, they knocked it down, gave her 5 years probation. And Mama's good. She's 80 years old now. She is like, she's the biggest complainer. I love my mother. And when I came home from prison, she insisted that I come live with her. I said, I'm 54 years old. I don't come visit. 6 years ago, she insisted. I lived with her for a year, and it was like I was her personal slave. Ronnie cleaned the gutter. Ronnie fixed my car. Ronnie painted the basement. Ronnie raked the leaves. It was like, no wonder you alone. I called and talked to her every day. She called me a little early, asked me how I was doing out here. I said, great. She said, you don't think, Brian, there's potatoes, so we can. God has always been in my life, and I always say that even in my foolishness, I said God protects babies and fools, and I was a darn fool, so He really protected me. I believe. I mean, I have a strong relationship with God, and I believe being spiritual, and God is like the reason I'm even standing and trusting. And I always, the thing about religion and spirituality in prison is always a kind of a difficult thing to navigate. And when I was head of religious organizations on the inside, I just always, I try to keep the incarcerated people from arguing and debating about which religion is right, which is wrong. I said, if you get your spirituality from this rock in the middle of the yard, that is great. That's your relationship with God, because salvation is personal. Nobody can save you but yourself. So I love all the religion. I can listen to every religion I can find, because I believe that there is a portion of truth in every religion. I don't care how much you agree or disagree. The religions that I practice, I never agree 100% with them. The ones I disagree with, I love a lot of what they said. And we all know it's a lot about interpretation. And it's about your personal relationship with God and how you treat others. That's the measure of your relationship with God, how you treat others. So for your church to have the mission of saving the poor, do you know how many poor people are incarcerated? In the United States, there are 77+ million people that have been convicted or on probation or parole or in prison. There's currently 2.4 million people in prison. There's 77 million that's been touched by prison on probation or parole. We only have 310 million people in the country. 77 million of them have been in contact with the criminal justice system. So the poor are among us. Those that have been incarcerated are among us. And my story, as crazy as it sounds, I'm not the exception. There's thousands and millions of me. All they need is an opportunity, someone to care. And one thing I always talk about when people came into the prison, and I would have these conversations before I let them speak to the men. I said, look, you may be a great minister or whatever you are, a professor or a lawyer, whatever I was bringing in at the time. I said, but the first thing you need to know is that these men, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, if you can convince anyone, I don't care what their race or creed or belief, whatever it is, if you convince them that you care, man, they will work with you. I don't care what they do in life. They may be an atheist. If you show an atheist that you care for them, they're going to be agreeable with you. So for your church to have this mission is so near and dear to my heart. I'm loving this. I am loving this. So hey, count me as an ally, a friend, a resource. If you got anything you guys need, mark out my number, my email address. Be careful, because I respond. You call me or send me an email, you'll get 10 emails back. So be ready. Questions? Thoughts?
So what exactly do you do?
I coordinate our leadership development. I personally run our leadership development program. We have two particular programs. One is called Emerging Leaders, which is a one-day program we take around the country and do markets. That's when he talked about he attended in Chicago 2 years ago. We do about 5 or 6 of those a year. We're funded by the MacArthur Foundation to hold them. And so it's leadership development training for formerly incarcerated people. Then we have our next level program, which is called Leading with Conviction. And it's a 1-year program that we hold in New York City. And we fly the people. It's a competitive application. Those that get chosen for the cohort, this year we had 36 in the cohort. We fly them to New York 4 times a year for weekends for in-person training with our lead trainer, David Mensah. We have webinars in between the forums. We have peer coaching sessions, we have executive coaching sessions. They are busy for the whole year. And once they're done, we graduate, give a certificate, they become one of our alumni. And we have a national network of emerging leaders and alumni. We currently have 582 leaders in 36 states plus Washington, D.C. Because we believe, our goal is to reach half by 2030. So we need people on the ground to be doing the work. We're not trying to change the work that people are already doing, like the work that systemic change of Idaho is doing, the advocacy work that they're doing on behalf of St. Vincent de Paul. We want to lift that up and support it as a national organization. So we don't want him to stop what he's doing. We're going to try to make him do what he do better so he can have much more impact here in your community.
So all the people that work for your organization are all formerly incarcerated?
Not all of them. We have some of our policy people were in the Obama administration during his presidency. Our senior policy advisor, our advisor to the president, these were people that worked in the Obama administration and had never been incarcerated. We have maybe half of our staff have been actually incarcerated. We currently have 35 staff, so maybe 15 of them are probably formerly incarcerated. Our new president who just came on board in July, she's trying to change that. She's restructuring the organization. She wants more directly impacted and formerly incarcerated people to be in the senior management level of the organization. So we bring it in the next few months, we're going to be bringing more people in and how directly impacted.
One of my concerns has always been how community responds to people getting out of prison. You know, I talk about my experiences in prison ministry and reentry, and they kind of look at me like I'm crazy. Are there ideas to get community, it's hard to get their hearts changed? Because even in our different religions, you know, it's hard to change hearts about people getting out of prison to where people are accepting.
Absolutely, she's asking about heart and mind change.
Well,
Yes, and that's one of our foundational principles is heart and mind change. Because for any reform in America to be sustainable, you're going to have heart and mind change. It's not enough just to change laws and policy. You know, I go to D.C. and work on policy and laws around the country, speaking to different legislative groups about the laws and how they can change them. But as we know, those can be changed with the stroke of a pen. So we try to teach our leaders to work on how to change hearts and minds. And you can change hearts and minds through sharing your story. One of the powers of people that's been incarcerated is to share your story, share the humanity of your story. A lot of us are ashamed to talk about our story. When we get out, we won't talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. When you come to our leadership development program, we teach you how to tell your story in a way that it helps change hearts and minds. And Mark reminded me earlier today about a conversation I had told him 2 weeks ago. I was flying home from New York, stuck on the tarmac and the weather delay. And I usually just kind of relax, try to get some rest on the plane. But I looked out the window and Rikers Island was right there across the river from the airport, from my runway. And so I made a comment about it, and there were two women sitting next to me. And they heard me say, I see, that's Rikers Island. I said, that's Rikers Island. We've heard about it, we've never seen it. And they launched into this conversation about when people that's in prison and on Rikers Island should be there. They should be there the rest of their lives. And they had their attitude about, they hated people that were in prison. I said, oh, really? Let me tell you my story. So I launched him. I started talking to him about, look, I was in prison. I'm fighting to close that prison over there right now. And 20 minutes later, we were Facebook friends. They were flying to Detroit too. They want to know how they can get involved in the reform work. They want to know the organizations that I know in Michigan that they can reach out to and do some volunteerism with. So it's just a matter of sharing your story in a way that engages people. It don't have, it's only a stigma if you let it be. People that's incarcerated, people in here that's been formerly incarcerated, it's only a stigma if you let it be a stigma. You have to accept it for it to be a stigma. They may make it difficult, and life is difficult. Life ain't fair. But you just have to find a way to overcome that label that they try to put on you and work towards showing them the humanity that's in you, because that'll trump everything else. You want to get an employee to hire you, show them that you're human and you're ready to work hard. They don't care. They don't care nothing about you being in prison. Talking about ban the box, in Michigan, we got away from that. I quit fighting for ban the box. We got a whole new program in Michigan that's called Certificate of Employability, where the department certifies the people that's getting out as eligible to work. The state is saying that if you hire this person, we will remove the liability from the employer in case you go postal. And that proved to be a much more effective way of getting formerly incarcerated people hired. Because now when you take the liability off the employer and they see how hard this person wants to work, they hire them. In Michigan, they can't find another good one. You see ads all the time. We hire directly impacted people. Who you got? And it's funny because of my job, because I'm the outreach coordinator for our leaders, I'm on everybody's Rolodex that's looking for formerly incarcerated people to hire. Executive directors all around the country, program directors. And Mark, he gets my email, he knows. So it's just a matter of humanizing yourself. And listen, have an ear to hear those that's less fortunate and have been impacted by the legal system because hey, they solving the same problems you at one time might have solved. But they get caught for it.
I had several questions actually. How is the organization funded?
Funded? Oh man, we can't. Glenn Martin, he's a silver tongue guy. He was I mean, let me share what I mean because in 2014, he launched the organization November 2014. We had that first gala benefit. And the first year, 2015, was the first full year of the actual launch of the organization. And I was in the first leadership program in 2015. And he did that first year on volunteer staff. There were like him and five other people. Total all volunteers. In 2016, he hired his first 5 staff members, of which I was one. But by that time, he had amassed so many funds from the MacArthur Foundation, Ford, Google, all these major funders around the country. Where we have now, we have a $4 million a year budget in 4 years. When he resigned back in December, he said, if you guys don't raise another penny, you can run for 2 more years debt-free. You don't have to raise a penny. But we were fortunate that our funders didn't vote on us, you know. We maintained our funders and we in the process of renewal. We got great funders. Probably about 100 of them. So yeah, we got good funders.
It's remarkable that you can turn to folks who have clearly stated how much they do not like former prisoners
Yes.
and be so cordial and open. Is that, do you try to train people who are in prison to open themselves to not get judged? You know, I mean, that must be the hardest thing.
Well, it's funny you ask that because this coming year, we're in the process of expanding our emerging leaders program into the prisons. So we can bring the same level of training that people that have gotten out of prison to get them started early, to get them thinking about telling their story, to get them thinking about being assets to their community instead of liabilities to their community. You know, those of us that have been inside, we believe that rehabilitation begins at the day you walk in, not the day you walk out. If you have been in prison for 10, 15, 20 years, and 6 months before you get out, they want you to take this re-entry course. How much of that do you think you'll actually absorb? It's a recipe for failure. So we're trying to get the departments around the country to take a look at that, to start the programming earlier, to provide better programming. Some, like in Michigan, they don't like to let people in to do programs. There's a lot of volunteers that want to go in and help programs. But because they're so scared of people actually seeing what's going on inside the prison, they put up all these barriers to keep volunteers out. And then when the incident happened, they overblow it. Like recently in Pennsylvania, they said half the staff got sick because somebody was mailing in fentanyl on stamps or whatever it was. I'm sure you heard that since you did the Department of Correction. But the experts have said that it's not transmittable through the skin like that. The people just have anxiety attacks because they think what's going on and they hyperventilate and get lightheaded and pass out. But it's funny, but it's stuff like that that shuts down access to people in prison. We laugh about it out here because we don't have to deal with it. And they suffering, trust me. Their mail is being screened, their mail is being withheld from, it's being photocopied. They may get it 2 weeks later. Can you imagine getting a letter of somebody that died 2 weeks after they died, but the administration was holding them because they were screening it? That happens. That's real. So that's what that's just one of the 1,000,001 problems that you have to overcome when you're incarcerated. That's it.
I'll ask one. Can you address
drug addiction and whether, prison is the right place for people who are addicted to drugs. I mean, is that the best place for them to go, or rehab?
Well, I'm in the camp that, prison is not a place for drug for dealing with drug addiction. That's a health issue, a social issue that should be dealt with outside of the confines of prison. And one of the things that always aggravates me is people get out with substance abuse issues, they go to their parole officer, they test dirty for the drug test, and they go back to prison. That is ridiculous. It should be going to treatment. We waste a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to house people in prison. People in prison think, well, they're making money off of it. They're not making no money, but it's costing a lot of money to incarcerate people. Trust me, Michigan is like $35,000 a year. I'm not sure what it costs out here. But Rikers Island is $210,000 a year for one person. So, yeah, it varies around the country. So, to answer your question, no, substance abuse should not be dealt with in prison. Those that have it, they should receive treatment while they're in prison, but they should not go to prison for that reason, in my opinion.
So did you do work to change the law? Because you got a 15-year sentence for
Assault with intentional murder, yes.
Isn't that crazy? I mean,
It's absolutely crazy.
so it's not that. I mean, it's not still a 15-year sentence.
Well, I mean, in my case, it was a police officer that was involved, so that's political, so to speak. I'm black, and in a community that's violent. Flint, Michigan was one of the most violent cities in America at the time. And it's funny because I had no juvenile record. I had no prior adult record. Had never had a felony, anything on my record. I was working at General Motors for 10 years. I was a tool and die maker, journeyman tool and die maker at General Motors in Flint, Michigan. So it's not like I was your quote-unquote typical criminal. But they treated me like I was worse than them. They gave me, the guidelines for my sentence was 10 to 20. The judge sentenced me to 50. So, go figure. What his calculus was, I don't know. Maybe just angry, big-head black guys. I don't know.
Do you have failures in your program, and what happens if people don't take it?
Well, it's the failures. The only way you can pretty much fail our program is because first, it's a high threshold to get in. It's a competitive application. This year we had like 7 PhD candidates with PhD people in the program. So it's not a program for the faint of heart. Only way you can fail is our people are so busy that if they don't show up for a form, and we let them know a year in advance, look, these are the dates you got to lock in on your calendar. Can you do it? Yes. We asked them this question like 10 times in the process. On the application, in the phone interview, in an interview with the lead trainer. We asked over and over, can you commit to these dates to be here in New York? And we pay for your flights, not like you're out there. If you say yes and don't show up, we kick you out. That was a big problem issue with March cohort. A couple of them, they were busy because they speaking at other conferences. Some of them had other contracts to do stuff, and they blew us off like we were a conference. They thought we were joking. Yeah, we have very talented people. But that's pretty much the only way you can fail. These people, these aren't failing people. These are super high achievers. I saw a hand in the back. Oh, you gonna duck out? Anything else?
So, having read about stuff, it's my understanding that, during President Reagan's time with the laws like 3 in or out, that really incarcerated a mass number of people. So, and yet I don't really know whether those laws totally went away, whether that mindset for judges changed from that. Is that more a federal decision or state judges?
Actually, it's more state. People think that the feds drive incarceration, but as the director can confirm, there are only about 220,000 people in the federal system out of 2.4 million. They make up like 10% of the prison population in the country. So it's not federal, it's driven by the states. And states have their own reasons for one high incarceration rate. Like in Michigan, we shut down like 10 or 11 prisons in the last year. And the communities that they shut those prisons down, they screaming bloody murder. Like, you're taking jobs away from the community. But you want jobs to be on the backs of people that are suffering? I mean, what's wrong with this picture? Where's the humanity in that? We want to keep you enslaved so we can have an economy for our community. I mean, it's a tough choice, and I get it. I understand how they feel, but it's more driven on the state level. And the drug laws you talk about, it's not so much that they've gone away, it's that I call it the pendulum effect. It's the practice and implementation of how they apply it. You know, during the 80s and 90s, they were on this real tough on crime bent. Everything was tough on crime. They took the Pell Grants out of the prison, which is insane. Because when you know better, you do better. So you're going to take education away from people that need it the most. That's a public disservice. That's a public safety issue. They took, to be tough on crime, they took Pell Grants out of prison. And they implemented all these other harsh and draconian measures. They started video visitation. You couldn't visit face-to-face with your family. So it breaks up the family ties. And a place like Michigan, I was telling Mark earlier that the furthest prison away from Detroit in Michigan is like 700 miles. It's like a 12-hour drive to get there. Nobody goes up there to visit people up there, not in the black community. So all these things started happening during the 80s. In the 90s, but now we're coming back. The pendulum is swinging back a little bit where they're easing up on some of those restrictions. Because they're not mandatory, it's just they're arbitrary and you can choose to apply them or not apply them. They're flexible. So the attitudes of people are changing. Some of the harsher minds are actually changing. But it's always like walking on eggshells because as soon as one or two bad cases happen, they go right back to being draconian again. So I'm encouraged, but I'm scared at the same time, like on a roller coaster.
Ron, we're not a state of a high crime rate, but we're a state that has a lot of recidivism. And I like your statement about drug addiction is not a punishable crime, it's something they need help with. I don't know how to approach that completely. Henry's here, he has some ideas, but what is your thought about how we should approach either the IDOC or the legislature or whoever about how do we move into this way of thinking?
I always advocate for face-to-face interaction between the lawmakers and the community people with people that's been involved in the system, justice involved individuals, and people that are not afraid to talk about the story. Because that humanizes it for the people that make laws, that's not in their backyard, it's not in their environment, so they don't really understand. And I always call the lawmakers, they're like bellwethers, they go whichever way the community wind is blowing. So the people in the community can come together and start holding seminars and discussions. Go to your legislators and and if you run an organization, hold what we call in Michigan Legislative Day, where you go and you get groups of people to go talk to your lawmakers and to your representatives and take the people that's been directly impacted with you. Have them share their stories. Call them, bug them, get in their ear. Just be relentless about it. And soon they start breaking down, they start listening. They start wanting to know answers because if you start coming up with solutions to things they don't really understand, they're going to start listening to you. Because to that point, they're just being reactionary. It's easy to say, oh, we throw them in prison and lock them up. They're not in my backyard. We don't have to worry about them. So if you can galvanize your formerly incarcerated people to help work jointly with you in the community to talk to the representatives and the people in the community that have to be so as well. Because let's be honest, a lot of our community members feel the exact same way. Like the two women that sat beside me on the plane, that they think everybody in prison should be there. But you change that heart and mind through sharing these stories and through these type of interactions. You wouldn't mind having me for your neighbor, would you?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Yvonne, does your group work with law enforcement, prosecutors to educate them on reform efforts?
Ooh, great question. Does my organization work with prosecutors and law enforcement on change? Great question. It's funny you said because Monday and Tuesday, I'm in Florida speaking at the NACO conference, which is National something for Law Enforcement. It's a law enforcement conference. And I'm speaking there as a panelist. We collaborate with law enforcement all over the country whenever we can. When they open to us, we go right to them. I'm launching a project with the Brooklyn DA's office in New York, where people that have graduated from our alumni community in New York, we're going to have an interactive session with the prosecutors, because one of the lead prosecutors, she was a professor at John Jay College. I should speak to her class, and she got recently hired by the Brooklyn DA's office, and she's bringing me in to help set up a program, a training program for the prosecutors on how to deal with people in the system, how to talk with them, how to interact with them, instead of being so adversarial. How can we work together to come up with a reliable solution? And that's going on more and more around the country, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm encouraged by that. And they're seeking us out. So that's really good. You got, well, I don't know if you know John Chisholm. He is the DA in Milwaukee County, and he's like one of the original progressive prosecutors in the country. He and I travel around doing this one-on-one dialogue called Redefining Justice in America, and we've done it at conferences, at prosecutor conferences. We've gone to colleges and done it. And so there are prosecutors and law enforcement that are actually looking for, progressive ways to be more, humane.
This might be, Henry could probably answer this one. What is the percentage of the population, prison population, that's returning to our community?
The percentage?
Yeah.
It's over 90%.
Over 90%? It's
over 90%.
So
90%, 93, 95% of people in prison are coming home.
In Idaho, it's probably 98% or coming back.
So it's to our best interest to provide an education and employment and whatever it can for those individuals that are returning to our communities, so that they don't find themselves back there, because they're going to be in the community. And
absolutely.
It's our responsibility.
Absolutely. Like I said earlier, it's a public safety issue. It's in the best interest of the community that we, try to aid and assist these people. When they first come in, don't wait till they come, don't wait till they get to the door and try to help them, because at that point, they're not here, they say, I'm going home in 6 months. They don't care about anything you say. Yes, I'll do it, yes, I'll do it. They just want to get out the door. So keep that in mind.
Has anybody ever pushed a little more of a training program in prison, so when they come out, they have a way to support themselves and have money in their pocket somewhere down the line? Because usually when you come out, you don't have any money, you have no source.
Right.
So is there a training program that could be put into the prison so they have a way to have a job later down the line?
And it is possible, and I'm sure the director can probably answer that much better than I can, but the reality of it is that you have, even if at the top he implemented a policy that will provide exactly what you're talking about statewide. Every prison, at least in Michigan and other states that I've been to, every prison, the warden is his own king at that prison. And if he doesn't want those programs, they're not going to happen.
So they're failing them before they start. They're saying, you're in prison.
Exactly. It's the attitude of the person running the prison and the line staff. I had this conversation
But wouldn't
the other
that be
day.
a better attitude of bringing a prisoner out of bondage? Well, I call it bondage, and that's what you were in, because you're just there.
Say it again, I think it's the first part.
And they would have something to go on to learn a process of what they could do later down the line, and have a focus on their life of when they get out, instead of doing the same thing. Because I have people I know right now are going into prison, and they've been in the drug industry, and that's all they know.
Yeah.
And you know where they're going to go right back to.
Well, I mean, the thing about that is if you got somebody you know that's going in, you should be in their ear trying to get them to think differently, trying to get them to try it. Because prison is one place where you don't have to take care of yourself.
I've already tried.
You have to be able to encourage them to do something other than what they do.
I understand that, but it's in an area that was depressed during Obama years, and of course, you know what we did in California. It blew up in California, so guess where everybody went to? Because no money was in any place, they couldn't find jobs, so they start selling weed. Weed starts going down in price. Guess where they go to?
That's a choice they make. Everything we do in life is a choice.
That's choice they make.
I went to prison innocently. And I could have chosen everything that you
I
talked about.
agree, but you know.
But I mean, you got, at some point, you got to take the self-responsibility.
I agree.
And accountability. It's accountability. You have to be accountable.
I agree.
Just because you go to prison does not absolve you of being accountable. I mean, you got to be accountable. I mean, I tell guys inside all the time, you got to be accountable. I got time for one more. It's my time to shut down. I see you, Paul. I know when I'm getting yanked.
Idaho has and habitat training programs. You get a job, it may pay 20 cents, but you get a job. You got CI.
Yeah.
So there are jobs in prison and training programs.
I know there.
The population is so big that not everybody can get a job.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's supply and demand. And you just have to be just as creative as you are at selling drugs and doing stupid stuff. Be just as creative as doing something helpful, useful. Help somebody for free. Charity. Because you're going to get paid back in spades. When I stop worrying about myself and being self-centered and self-concerned and said, forgive me, I'm going to help the community, I got more blessings than I can't even write the book on things that start happening. With that, I really thank you for inviting me out here. It's been a real
Well, that was probably a discussion that not all of us have an opportunity to participate in regularly. So I think it was a tremendous opportunity for us as members of St. Vincent de Paul to educate ourselves a little more on the challenges that face the poor. This is a challenge that faces the poor. Incarceration, violence, the challenges of coming out of prison,